There's a beautiful part in our Psalms which finds its way in our liturgy. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Sing to God. Sing to God a new song. It's a wonderful statement. We don't know what the melody was of our ancestors because we don't have recordings. We don't have notation from that period of time, from the biblical period. But it's a remarkable statement to make. It's a challenging statement, right? For those of us that get, hooked on music and certain music, it can't change in synagogue, or it's not right? Or bring back that melody, or this melody, or I was never at Woodstock, but give me back the old Woodstock tunes, and if I hear them, I'm suddenly part of that generation. I'm going to talk for a bit, and I'm going to hold your comments. We'll get a chance to interact that way before. So that particular speaking, and yet, what often we do is we sing the same old song. We have a particular melody that we might have to Shir l'Adonai Shir Chadash, and we sing the same song every time we come around to that cycle. And yet what the liturgy is saying is, you may sing all these old songs, but when you get to this, sing a new song. So when I lead prayer, I've often started when I get to that part of the liturgy, which is, for those of you that know, the morning liturgy happens just before, in the Michamocha section of prayer, just before the standing prayer, the Amidah, right? I usually stop after that and I say, anyone got a tune today? And it's never failed that whenever someone sings, whether it's a Sinatra piece or Beethoven or Rolling Stones, whatever, we find a way of fitting it to that. And you know what's interesting? Is whoever was asleep before that moment suddenly wakes up. Suddenly I'm actually singing this song in this moment as opposed to praying, pressing replay and being asleep with the melody coming out. And something changes as a result of that. So the music, the soundtrack of the Jewish soul, is also meant to wake us up. There's a beautiful phrase in Machad Dodi, the prayer that was composed in later medieval times in Tzfat, one of our alphabets, a Kabbalist. And the phrase, I always skipped over it. Why? Because I was unconscious with whatever melody I was singing. So I didn't notice what I was singing. And then one day I stopped just going in the regular groove and I was trying to work out a new melody to that. And because I was trying to sing a new song, I noticed the words in a different way than I had inherited. And this one phrase that comes across, hitorari, uri kiva oreh. Wait a minute, it's a lovely phrase, it's poetic in Hebrew. Wake myself up, wake myself up, wake up, wake up. Now, unless I'm mistaken, and this could have happened on occasion, my wife would be able to attest to this, whether I sing in my sleep, but most of us actually sing when we're awake. So what are we actually saying as we're singing this, wake myself up, wake myself up, wake up? Clearly, the melody and the words are trying to evoke something different, a level of consciousness that only melody can bring. So these are some of the things that are planted in our particular liturgy as we go through. So there's a variety of places to give expression to our voices. And when I say the music of the Jewish, whatever the title is, it's got 3 different titles, so I'm not sure what the name of tonight is, but the music or the soundtrack of the Jewish soul. Right? When we think of that, that's not just singing. For those of you who feel, oh, I don't have the voice, I can't really sing in a Jewish context, play an old Rex Harrison. If I could walk with the animals. Or even better, get the Peter Sellers rare copy of his Beatles songs, in which the guy couldn't sing. He recorded every Beatles song in 1965, speaking it. She loves you, yeah, 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 and you know that can't be bad. And he just talks through all of them, and just, and a bestseller, right? Speaking through that voice. There is song, but there's also chant, there's poetic reading, humming a note. Does anybody know, before we added the words, what were we doing at the beginning of this evening? You know what that was called? A nigun, right? A wordless melody that itself transports us, carries meaning, locates us in time and space. A nigun cannot be part of a text study. In fact, there was a soundtrack of the Jewish soul. If we were studying in the yeshiva, the ancient academies, on one hand, so and so on the other. And some of that even found its way to different songs, And we make our children sing that. We invite them, and it's one of the first things they learn fairly easily. Why? Why do they learn those difficult words, which have Hebrew and even some Aramaic now and then thrown in? What enables that to happen? The music. There's a part in our hardwire, in our souls and in our brains, that music can access that the spoken word on itself cannot. And so the way of memorizing reams and reams of laws and halachot, etc., were by using an intonation that one could lilt, and therefore get into parts of the brain switch from right to left hemispheres. You know, our ancestors may not have called them that, but they knew enough that there were different ways of accessing these pieces. So that's when we talk about the music or the soundtrack of the Jewish soul. It's not just particular melodies in times of year or songs. It's all these different ways. I'm trying to empower you too. When you walk out of here, you say, I'm part of the soundtrack. Whether you're a big singer, whether you have a CD, whether you can do harmony or whatever, to know that your voice counts. The Psalms themselves are musical poetry. Some of the most ancient musical poetry that we can have. And our Bible is filled with it, sometimes explicitly, as we'll look at this wonderful slideshow prepared for you here this evening. Sometimes it says, and this song was sung, but more often than not, it's in a cadence in that Hebrew word language. In fact, we have a song that gives us a list of what the band played in the ancient temple. Song number 150, thank you. Okay, you want a Chrysler Cordova. We're giving out big prizes this evening, right? And we invite you to donate a portion of that back to Siegal College as well. So, Psalm 150 gives a list of everything that people played in the band. And of course, when the temple gets destroyed, the custom becomes not to play those instruments anymore, out of a sense of mourning. Like when one is sitting Shiva, when one is mourning the loss of a loved one, you might abstain from music, what pleases and sings the soul for a period of time. But then that became the new tradition. You know, and for some people, that has been and done, and it's time to bring the band back. And for other people, that's not the case. Maybe not because they're wishing there's a third temple will come and the band can come back, but because that connects them to a tradition that they feel gives them a sense of comfort and location. When I think of soundtracks, I've often told this story. My first High Holy Day service as a pulpit rabbi in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm standing at a stender at a podium like this, and we're about to start, and there's a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, just standing there with like huge wide eyes, her jaw drawn open, just staring at me. And clearly she's not going to go away, you know. So I said, well, sweetheart, what's happening? Can you tell me what's going on? She went, wow. I went, wow, what do you mean? She said, I didn't know men could be rabbis too. She only had 3 women rabbis. Tradition. So in that moment, I was shattering tradition, right? By just showing up in this gender construct, right? So it's imperative to our understanding of religion and religious culture that we understand also this creative impulse, going back to, and in the beginning God creates, right? And speaks, one could say sings, utters into existence. So when we talk about the soundtrack of our soul and the core connection of music in Jewish life, I think that's also what we're talking about. We're talking about one of the most core places that godliness expresses itself in the world. Through the voice, through song, through music, through written poetry. It doesn't have to be, you know, what if we lose our voice? Will we lose the song? No. We can hum in our minds, we can write things out, we can speak, write, create ourselves into existence. Why I spent the time laying that groundwork is if we jumped right into aspects of music and history of music and Jewish people, we would miss that core impulse that I think was there from the beginning of creation and that sustains us as a people. That's been part of our rebirth out of the ashes of the Shoah. There has never been more CDs, almost every congregation has one, and Jewish artists, there's Maury sitting there, and you know, the Jewish musicians he connects with, and he's going to take tonight back to Israel with him when he leaves on Thursday. And that back and forth in a global world in which we've even moved beyond what a classic definition of Jewish music might